Edinburgh. A capital brimming with character and life. And this is thanks, in large part, to its joyous culture scene. You won't have to look far to discover everything Edinburgh has to offer in the arts. But there is one form of expressionism that can't go unnoticed though, and this is the visual arts, and in particular, film. But the film scene would not be close to where it's at today without one of the country's leading venues for the movies. Following a devastating few years, it is just about back on its feet again. Here is the story of Edinburgh's iconic Filmhouse cinema. Now, Scotland are no strangers to the world of cinema. In fact, they're quite a powerhouse when it comes to some of the films made and set in this country, with one of my personal favourites being Bill Forsyth's wonderful comedy drama, Local Hero, from the early 1980s. And for Edinburgh, this is all the same, with films being made and set here in the place that we've all come to know and love. And this is even as recently as this year, with Laura Carrera's social realist drama On Falling, depicting the life and struggles of a warehouse worker, being released in March. Edinburgh also has its fair share of spectacular venues to see the latest films too, whether that's the more niche titles at the Cameo or your big studio releases like at Cineworld, which also has the city-exclusive IMAX format available. So when it comes to cinemas, there are plenty of options in Edinburgh to see your new releases, but once upon a time, one stood above the rest in the capital. A cinema so special that not only did it serve as a safe space for thousands of film lovers for decades, but also established itself as the crucial centrepiece of the world's longest continually run film festival. This is of course the Filmhouse Cinema. Nowadays, we all know the Filmhouse to be located at 88 Lothian Road, but the idea of this central venue for Edinburgh cinema hasn't always been at this location. From the 1940s to 1970s, as the Edinburgh Film Guild grew larger in members, the Filmhouse first settled in buildings at Hill Street and Randolph Crescent before the church at Lothian Road was purchased to turn into a cinema, the same one we know today. Following its move to Lothian Road, the Guild then rebranded and merged the words Filmhouse together, which has stuck ever since. The Filmhouse would screen between 650 and 850 films per year, with around 300 to 400 of those titles only being shown here as far as the city are concerned. The Filmhouse would often also support nearby schools and universities to support the space that film and culture holds in education, which would help create many memories and opportunities for keen film lovers and makers to move forward in their dreams of telling all kinds of stories through the moving pictures. I went to Leith to chat to producer Chris Young, known for his head role in leading the Sean Connery Talent Lab, as well as founding Young Films, the production company most known for creating the hit British comedy series The In-Betweeners. I asked Chris about his relationship with the Filmhouse over the years.
I have been kind of inextricably connected with the Filmhouse since before it was built. When I was 15, I signed up for Workers' Educational Association night classes in film, which were run at the time by Linda Miles. I then graduated to getting a job as a ticket tearer there, and I saw a huge number of films. I was also a member of the Edinburgh Film Guild. So when I left Edinburgh age 17, I'd already established quite a connection with what was, I suppose, the sort of pre-Filmhouse, but effectively the Filmhouse as it was then. And when I came back 2 or 3 years later, or possibly less, Filmhouse was up and running. And I then worked for the film festival under Linda Miles, for 2 years, 1 year under Linda, 1 under Jim Hickey, and I also did various ushering and bar jobs at the Filmhouse. And then, you know, years passed, and I then produced. I became a producer. I set up my company, Young Films, and became my very first feature film we premiered at the Edinburgh Film Festival in the Filmhouse, and I remember it vividly in Filmhouse 1. Amazing. Just jumping forward, I think many of my feature films as producer and production company with Young Films have been at the Filmhouse. So I really feel as if I've, all my early formation was very much connected with the Filmhouse.
While in Leith, I also caught up with award-winning filmmaker Harvey Gardner, where he explained to me why the Filmhouse is so important to him, and in particular, how it helped him meet his fiancée.
So we met on box office, working together, and I think it was like the last day of working on box office that year. I just knew we got the same bus together, so it's like, this is my last chance, final chance. You know, finished up, she finished up, and little did I know she wasn't getting the bus that day, so I was waiting at the bus stop. A couple of buses went by and I was like, she's clearly, I've missed my chance. And then the next day, I think it was my final shift, but she wasn't on the rota. And Kelsey Priest, she was waiting at the bus stop, and I was like, oh my God, this is fate. So I asked her on the bus, the end of our journey, and we're getting married in exactly a month's time. So 7-8 years later, so it's kind of mad how important the Filmhouse has been in that respect.
2010 saw the next big step in the Filmhouse's journey, when the Centre for the Moving Image, a registered charity, was formed to combine the Filmhouse and the Film Festival into one corporation, also joined by Aberdeen's Belmont Cinema.
Which at the time was a good idea. You know how they say, it was a good idea at the time. And it was really to put an emphasis on the importance of cinema exhibition and cultural cinema exhibition, and possibly be prepared for supporting the sector nationwide. So that was all kind of set up.
It was a great time for the Filmhouse, and in March 2020, despite the ongoing COVID pandemic, plans were revealed to expand the cinema into a new home at Festival Square, right beside the building at Lothian Road, to take the organisation to the next step. The film theatre looked to be on the rise, with its most exciting project in its history. The city's culture scene stood still. With the Filmhouse's closure, then also came genuine doubt about the future of the International Film Festival. The news and sadness was felt by all.
When it closed down, when it went in, the Centre for the Moving Image organisation went into administration and Filmhouse closed, that was sort of a huge shock for everybody.
Beyond a huge disappointment and kind of shock and, sadness, I suppose I did wonder why and what had brought that about. And I don't know, it sounds to me as if it was very much a combination of COVID, but also programming. I guess the films that were being shown were not bringing in audiences.
Yeah, I think it came as a bit of a shock to everyone. I think it was a real shame how it all went down, and the staff felt a wee bit, just kind of came out of left field, and they all felt a little bit displaced at that time, I think.
Anger was probably my first reaction. Disappointment was a really large part of that reaction. I didn't understand why the administration was necessary, but the simple fact was it was an administration.
I had such amazing times at Filmhouse, and I think it's so sad to think of all those staff going into a meeting one day and like a Monday morning and just being like, yeah, you don't have a job anymore, which is really shitty. There should have been more lead up and more preface to that being the case, rather than just, right, we're going to administration. You know, it should have been a month in advance saying to their staff, this is the case, this is what's going to happen. We're going to safeguard you in any way we can and help you.
Some of the remnants of the Filmhouse before its closure can still be accessed online, as you'll find that the old website is still up there for all to see. When you first visit, you are met with a statement about the CMI going into administration and the resulting closure of its properties. But you'll also see that the website actually still has the screenings up for the films it would have been showing around the time that the Filmhouse closed in October of 2022. Along with this, we can see the last post that was put up from Rod White, who was head of programming, and this was uploaded on the 5th of October 2022, just the day before the CMI went into administration. Luckily, the film festival was saved and retained its status after Screen Scotland came to the rescue, but without the Filmhouse at its core, who knew if it would ever feel the same? But not all hope was totally lost. Work began immediately to find the best way to bring Filmhouse back.
Really, at that point, it's not about your reaction personally, it's about how do you make the best out of this, how do we get something. How do we try and save the Filmhouse, essentially? That was the priority.
In the weeks following its closure, 4 former employees of the Filmhouse made it their goal to get working on finding a way to get the movement started. One of those members was Ginny Atkinson, a former managing director at the film festival and chief executive of the Filmhouse. Screen Scotland were also very crucial in supporting this effort, led by its director of screen, David Smith. I talked to David and Ginny to hear all about the campaign, going all the way back to the start, with a gathering of former employees.
What happened very briefly was that we all met in the pub one night, about a month after it had closed, and the building was up for sale. And when I say we all, what I mean is former colleagues at various times we'd all known and sort of trusted each other. And 2 of us had moved on, you know, James Rice, he wasn't working there anymore, but Rod White and David Boyd were and had been made redundant, and not that that's the point, but Filmhouse had closed. So the 4 of us were just talking really late one night in the pub and said, what we're going to do, you know, and we all had various ideas. It was mainly about fundraising so we could buy the building.
But it was only really when the current team, the Filmhouse Edinburgh team, crystallised and those 4 individuals came together that we had a realistic opportunity to recover that building as the Filmhouse. But there was a key step before all of that, which was who was going to buy it.
Falling short of the estimated target of raising £2 million in their first attempt to buy the building, 88 Lothian Road was sold to a buyer looking to turn the building into a film-themed pub, but this never went through.
There is a moratorium on alcohol licensing in Lothian Road, and the first company that bought the building in December 2022 was a pub chain, and the purchase was conditional on getting a licence.
Which happily fell through. It fell through at the last minute, and at that point Caledonian Heritable were able to step in as the new buyer of the Filmhouse. We met, Ginny Atkinson and myself met with Kevin Doyle at Caledonian Heritable prior to their concluding the purchase. So before they were confirmed as the new owner, Ginny and I were able to sit down and set out exactly why Filmhouse is so important to Edinburgh, to Scotland as a cinema. Kevin and his colleagues listened to us and then opened up a kind of more detailed dialogue with Ginny and her colleagues around how that might be possible.
I think, to be honest, because Screen Scotland were very much involved and supportive, that encouraged Caledonian Heritable to take us seriously, and so it went on from there.
Kevin Doyle's decision at Caledonian Heritable to entertain the request from Ginny and her colleagues was the crucial step in getting the doors open again, or at least the first crucial step.
But despite earning credibility for the idea and getting charitable status, Raising efficient funds was the next big task ahead of the team, and in September 2023, a crowdfunder was set up by Filmhouse Edinburgh Limited, opening up the project for the public to show their support to get the cinema back. The slogan, "Open the Doors," has become synonymous with the Filmhouse's campaign, and ever since it began, you have seen posters just like this one going around the city, and at the bottom are QR codes which take you to the Filmhouse's crowdfunder, which offers supporters the chance to donate towards helping save the cinema. Now, at the time of this recording, the Filmhouse has raised from the crowdfunder about over £300,000.
Thousands of people have pledged cold hard cash to open those doors again. That's a really loyal audience base that are going to hopefully be the bedrock of that cinema's future.
The success of the crowdfunder demonstrated the support that independent cinemas and filmmaking still receive from audiences in an era dominated by subscription services and the ongoing fight to keep the cinema experience alive.
Clearly that's a big issue now anyway, and there's a whole discussion about why, if and why people want to go to the cinema, and the streamers, and whether there is an audience for films in the cinema. I mean, my biggest commercial success was absolutely reliant on a UK theatrical release, because it was a comedy, which this is the In-Betweeners movie, and we'd had a very successful TV series for sure, but the film was different, and I think what I noticed with that was it was a kind of event experience. I mean, people went out with their friends to be together in a big space laughing, and that is, you can't replicate that at home. I think it's very different if you're in a big audience and a lot of people are going with a film. It's a very particular kind of emotion.
With the launch of the crowdfunder also saw messages come from many industry professionals, showing the encouragement and support from some of Britain's biggest film stars towards the campaign.
I think quite quickly I realised that it was definitely possible, and even though it wasn't going to be the same as it was, it would come back in some way, shape or form.
What was really gratifying about the crowdfunder was that even without the films of people like Emma Thompson saying, "Open the doors," we had a massive response, and that was really revelatory in terms of us understanding how widely Filmhouse was valued. And that, of course, was very encouraging for everybody.
Two of these stars being actor Jack Lowden and filmmaker Charlotte Wells, who eventually became the Filmhouse's patrons. Jack's story of getting involved was particularly memorable.
He's a good example because he was one of the first people to lament the closing of Filmhouse before we were actually involved, because he got up at the BAFTAs in 2022, Scottish BAFTAs, and it was quite funny because he won Best Actor. And he kind of took the thing and said, "Thanks very much. By the way, Filmhouse is closed."
We in this room, we have no cause without these cinemas. We have no cause. The stories that we choose to tell and the issues that we choose to give voice to, they remain untold and unheard without independent cinemas. Without cinemas, we are just a bunch of fancy idiots making beautifully shot, wonderfully scored, perfectly acted apparently, pieces of work that we just chuck out into the ether.
So we kind of homed in on him because we knew that, and somebody I knew was in touch with him. So we were able to get in touch with him personally, which is of course much better than going through agents. So when we got around to needing patrons, I just asked him. By then we were, that was easy.
With the news of the new patrons also came the announcement that the team had received a lease following months of preparing their application, meaning work could finally begin on restoring the Filmhouse on its journey to reopening. This campaign has went from strength to strength in order to get this place back open, but this process has involved a lengthy spell for refurbishing to be able to bring audiences back to a worthy Filmhouse. Now, this cinema has been closed for over 2 years now though. So what's the current state of the interior? Well, we're going in right now to find out. These rooms haven't been in use for years, and it shows. This is the foyer area, which will be getting a makeover in terms of its design. That's making me hungry. Here is what was, and what's left of, for now anyways, of the Filmhouse's cafe bar. And during the film festival, this is where film fans would get the chance and opportunity to chat and discuss all things movies with famous filmmakers and professionals in the industry, making it one of the great parts of coming here during festival season. It has had its memories locked away behind closed doors all this time. It is certainly a shadow of its former self and glory. And this is Cinema 1, a historic screening room that has seen classics premiered here. The seats are currently in quite the state though, with stitching coming out, but it won't be long until fresh new ones are installed that we can relax in as the films play. One of the biggest plans for the new Filmhouse is a brand new fourth screen which will be brought in, and the roof is even being modified to make space for it. This will be a small screen that can be used in educational visits, as well as making sure there are still those opportunities of catching titles before they leave theatres. This is Cinema 3, which could seat over 50 members of an audience to watch a film here at the Filmhouse. And next door is what was the cinema's guild room, and which will now serve, once the building is completed with its refurbishment and reopened to the public, as the Filmhouse's new Cinema 4. But despite the closure, the projectors still work all the same, keeping those dreams alive of returning to action for good.
I really miss Filmhouse, so my first order of business is to get in there, watch a movie or two, and then we'll carry on doing what we've always done, which is we work collaboratively with the Filmhouse team on the programming, on audience development, on education and outreach. Filmhouse was genuinely profound for lots of people. We saw that in the whole campaign, and I think we have an opportunity now for Edinburgh to have a really, really stonking cultural cinema.
Without people making independent films, and without those films getting shown in places like Filmhouse, at the AFF and out with the festival, then they don't get the second film where they get slightly more funding, and the third and the fourth.
I'm delighted that it's coming back, obviously. I think it's wonderful. I think it's interesting that they're actually refurbing, and that what was then, I mean, it makes me feel my age, but what was then brand new is now getting a whole new facelift. But it can only be good news. I think when the lights went out, there's a slight feeling of, my God, is that the end of that whole culture? And I think the truth is that thanks to Ginny and others, it's coming back. So we can only be very excited about that.
Thank you everybody that has helped in any way whatsoever. Mon the hoose.
We're only a couple months away from being able to get back in here and to be able to enjoy the vibrancy and magic of going to the movies in the greatest place that our city has to offer. The Filmhouse is about to rise again, and the road to recovery is almost complete.